Good morning and welcome to Korea Today, live from Seoul.
Power prices will go up by an average of 5.4% starting tomorrow, the second hike in 10 months. The government says it's inevitable in order to curb energy use. Consumers are saying not again.
Historical documents containing new discoveries of the Japanese colonial rule are unveiled. Details coming up.
And how entrenched is Google in Korea? We'll have the answer on In Print.
Super high-rise buildings are filling Seoul's skyline. Which one's the tallest one now, and is it safe? We'll tell you the answer on this edition of Korea Today.
And we take you on yet another trip to Busan, where the southern port city has managed to bring quality and convenience to the medical tourism business. We get a look in our part 2 of Busan Meditours. And it's been reborn as a scenic spot where the past and present coexist. We take you to the Seoul branch of the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art that recently opened on Wednesday, November 20th, 2013.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And thanks for tuning in. You're watching Korea Today on a Wednesday morning. I know many people are saying up again with a big question mark to this piece of news.
That's right, it's not getting up again in the morning, but Korea will increase power prices for the second time this year in an effort to curb the excessive demand that's been causing these shortages, which have been plaguing Korea's power supply for the past 5 years.
This piece of news is facing a huge backlash from not just the consumers, but also the Federation of Korean Industries, which is pointing out that there's been 14 hikes in industrial energy prices since the year 2000. They're saying this is taking a huge toll on the industrial sector, so that now they're demanding that the government reveal the generation costs of energy. But consumers are unhappy about it. But like it or not, you will have to start saving energy.
That's right. This will also hit the industrial sector by a big margin as well. And we'll have a little bit more on this with Hwang Jie coming up in our news report.
We start at the National Assembly, where an interpellation session came to a shuddering halt on Tuesday as all of the main opposition Democratic Party lawmakers stormed out. The session only resumed after the ruling party apologized for blaming an opposition lawmaker for a scuffle that broke out a day earlier between DP lawmaker Kang Ki-jung and a presidential security officer. That incident occurred shortly after President Park Geun-hye delivered her budget speech at the National Assembly. Kang and several other DP lawmakers had demanded presidential security staff move their vehicles from outside the main National Assembly building so that they could hold a rally against the president. When Kang kicked one of the parked vehicles, a security officer grabbed the lawmaker by the scruff of his neck, which led to a tussle that ended with the officer being injured. Ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker Chung Moon-hun stepped out of the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's office after more than 10 hours of questioning over suspicions that he illegally obtained and leaked a classified transcript of the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit. While stepping out of the prosecutor's office on Wednesday, Chung told reporters that he gained access to the transcript back in 2009.
I read the summit minutes as the unification secretary for the presidential office because I had to know for work purposes what happened back then. I believe I revealed the truth that the public has a right to know, but that could have been concealed forever.
The summit transcript has raised controversy after the ruling party accused the late South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun of conceding the inter-Korean maritime border to the north during the meeting. In July, the main opposition Democratic Party filed charges against Chung, who claimed to have read the draft minutes. If you currently live in Korea, you may notice a difference in your electricity bills starting next month. The government will raise power rates by an average 5.4% from tomorrow to rein in the country's heavy use of electricity. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Tuesday electricity prices for households will be raised by 2.7%, while that consumed by the industrial sector and large office buildings will go up by 6.4%. 4% and 5.8% respectively. A 5% range rise in power prices comes for the first time in 17
This
years.
is not simply about adjusting electricity prices, but to strengthen management of the nation's energy consumption and reflect the recent changes in the environment of power usage.
While the rate hike is expected to increase costs for manufacturers, the government says the additional burden for ordinary households will be minimal or at about 1,300 won, or roughly $1 per month for each household. A pile of decades-old documents containing new discoveries on Japan's brutal colonial rule in the early 1900s was unveiled by the Korean government on Tuesday. The 67 volumes of documents list more than 200,000 victims and include those killed during the March 1st independence movement, one of the earliest public displays of Korean resistance during the Japanese occupation, and the Kanto massacre, as well as those forced into labor by Japan's colonial authorities. A false rumor was spread when Japan's Kanto plain was hit by a devastating earthquake in 1923 that Koreans were taking advantage of the disaster. Thousands of ethnic Koreans were mindlessly slaughtered by mobs in Tokyo and Yokohama. The National Archives says the documents contain detailed information like the dates of birth and addresses of the victims that had not previously been disclosed.
Good morning, everyone, and we'll pick up right off of Hwang Ji-hae's last headline as the discovery of those lists are being met with gravitas by the papers as well. Let's go ahead and begin with a look at the front page of Gyeongyang Shinmun. Its headline reads, "Proof of Japanese massacre of Koreans sees light after 60 years." And as you heard, the number of listed victims is sizable, and it is being called the oldest known registry of victims under Japanese colonial rule. The books were discovered as the Korean embassy in Japan was preparing to move, and the registry is said to have been compiled under the orders of then-President Lee Seung-man ahead of the Second Korea-Japan Conference in 1953. Now, in this 67 registry books were some 630 names of martyrs connected to the March 1st independence movement and 290 Koreans massacred after the Kanto earthquake. A registry of some 229,000 names of those forcibly drafted into forced labor and the military was also disclosed there. And what makes this discovery significant are two things: that this is the first documentation of victims of the March 1st independence movement, as well as the Kanto earthquake massacre, and that the books are quite detailed. Not only their names, but details such as their age, address, date, and situations of their death were recorded too. The books are expected to serve as an impetus for further study and could potentially lead to further requests for compensation to Japan. Scooting over to Joseon-Ilbo now, it also has the story on its front page. Its headline reading, 105 unknown martyrs of March 1st independence movement made public with the list. And these newly discovered martyred freedom fighters will now enter an evaluation process to receive a national merit, according to the paper. Now, its front page image shows the United States' newly arrived ambassador to Japan stepping out of a horse-drawn carriage at the Imperial Palace of Japan. Our next paper also has a similar picture, so let's go ahead and scoot on over to 중앙일보. Its image title reads, "Ambassador Kennedy meets Emperor," broadcast live throughout Japan. Now, if you haven't recognized her already, that is Caroline Kennedy, daughter of the late U.S. President John F. Kennedy, stepping out to meet Japanese Emperor Akihito to present her credentials. That is customary, but what was not was the live broadcast of Kennedy's arrival at the palace. The newly minted ambassador is also set to meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe today, according to the caption. And scooting right over to 동아일보 now, it has an interesting front page story over here. The headline reads, "Path of Movement, search words, email, Google is watching. In the context of growing concerns over online security, the newspaper highlights Google's deep entrenchment in Korean society and the inability to gauge where and how that information collected by the information giant is being used. The article goes on to report that nearly 92% of smartphones in Korea run the Android operating system, and most do subscribe to a Google account because downloading application does require one. Now, using the GPS feature, the article says Google records the user's way home, as well as all the words he or she ever searched for on the search engine. The article also gives an example of one government worker who uses his Gmail account on his smartphone while shuttling from Seoul to the administrative city of Sejong. He says that his government email is inaccessible on his cell phone, so he's gravitated toward using his Gmail account more. The article cautions that such data is stored on a U.S. server where only the company and the U.S. government can access it. Interesting there. And we'll go ahead and wrap things up with a quick look at Main Business newspaper. Its headline reads, industrial electricity prices to go up 6.4%, leaving businesses crying. The rate change is effective starting tomorrow, as you heard in the headlines, with companies taking the brunt of this hike at 6.4% and households at 2.7%. Meanwhile, this will translate on average for city households an additional 1,310 won. That's a little bit over $1 per month. And with that, we'll wrap your look at what's in print on this Wednesday. Next up, your closing numbers from Tuesday's market action.
That's right, it is Wednesday, and Seoul has started the day off at -3 degrees Celsius. Let me tell you, this will make you shiver.
Well, it's not getting any better, right? We're gonna have
So cold this morning.
This
we're
morning.
gonna have to get used to this. We'll go over to Lee Dami, who's joining us from Cheongno-gu in Seoul. Good morning,
to
Dami.
you, Dami.
She looks cold.
Good morning, everyone. Today I'm reporting live from Cheongno-gu, Seoul. Wow, it seems like winter is already here, as it is once again another cold morning here in Seoul. Lows have reached its peak this season at -3 degrees Celsius. But with the sharp gusty winds blowing our way, our body temperatures are going to feel much cooler, dipping down to -6.9 degrees. Now, these frigid conditions are going to continue throughout the week, but by the weekend, it looks like our temperatures are going to rise back up to the average seasonal temperatures. But until then, it looks like you are all going to have to bundle up from head to toe. Now, there are dry advisories that have been issued over in the east edge of the peninsula, so please be careful when handling fires if you are in those areas. Now, in most of the nation, we'll be seeing clear skies throughout the day. However, over in Chungcheongnam-do and Jeju Island, there will be partly cloudy skies. All right, let's now go ahead and check the weather around the nation. Seoul's highs will reach only to 6 degrees, Daejeon not far off at 8, Gangneung and Gwangju at 9, while Jeju Island will be the warmest at 12 degrees. That's all I have for the weather. I'll be back to show you a new museum here in Seoul.
As you heard earlier in the headlines, a stack of historical documents was released by the Korean government, which shed more light on Japan's past aggressions during World War II and its occupational rule of Korea. For more details, we are now joined by Dr. Bong Young-sik, Senior Research Fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome to the program.
Morning, it's really cold outside. It's like Korea-Japan relations.
Exactly. So, I mean, what are the significance of the documents that was unveiled yesterday, especially as it comes as Korean victims of forced labors are seeking for compensation from Japanese companies?
You can approach this issue in terms of Korea having additional leverage on Japan, in terms of putting additional pressure on Japan's government to come out clean with the colonial past. But I'd like to also focus on the other aspect, which is what kind of virtue Koreans themselves can make out of this discovery and unveiling of this document. Because it could be a good, sober moment of reflection for Korean people and their government to think about what they need to do to respect and honor their own past. You remember that the reason why party politics in the first year of Park Geun-hye government has been virtually lost is that controversy related to the so-called lost original documents, the record of the summit meeting between Chairman Kim Jong-il of North Korea and South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun in 2007. And the Korean soccer fans created a kind of controversy during the East Asian Soccer Cup by displaying gigantic placard saying that there's no future for a nation that has forgotten history. And Koreans can use this moment as a somber reminder whether they have not been doing enough to honor their own history and victims.
Right. So could the Korean government do anything with these documents unveiled?
Well, it'll take a substantial amount of time for Korean government to contemplate on what kind of measures.
To actually analyze.
Analyze the value of the document as well. We are reported that most of the documents is a compilation of personal accounts and testimonies, so that the government should go through the process to test the validity of those accounts. And the document was collected during the high time of the Korean War in 1953.
So let's move on to the relationship that you mentioned earlier when we started the interview. I mean, the relationship has been very frosty these days between the two nations, Korea and Japan, regarding issues of the sex slaves and also the territorial disputes over the Dokdo Islets. So what impact will these documents have in the relationship?
It is rather premature to predict anything about the impact of the unveiling of this document. But it is very concerning that the current Korea-Japan relationship is hitting probably the lowest point in modern history. According to the recent public polls that Asan Institute for Policy Studies conducted, in terms of country favorability, Japan is even lower than that of North Korea. The favorability of the United States stands
even lower than North Korea. That's surprising.
That of the United States stands at 6.4 and China at 4.2 and Japan at 2.4, which is lower than North Korea's 2.7.
Wow, 0.3 percentage points lower. So, I mean, but the list of the Kanto earthquake massacre, I mean, going back to the documents, they also include some victims of a 2-year-old baby. I mean, could these documents change the stance of the Abe's administration of how they deal with the historical issues?
We have to separate the issues in terms of Japan making decisions on the official responsibility for the victims and the decision potentially made by the Abe administration about Japan being the big supporter for humanitarian causes. Because it is too early to say that the documents indicate that Japan's colonial government was directly behind all these atrocities.
So you believe that these documents could prove that?
It is too early to say that, as illustrated by the rather cautious attitude displayed by the spokesperson of Korean government's foreign ministry.
Exactly. But my last question is that how about in broader terms? We were talking about the relationship between Korea and Japan, but in broader terms, how could these documents change, in a way, the dynamics of other countries, I mean, in the region, like the United States or China?
I would say that both people in Japan and Korea needs to be very patient before they begin to see any kind of thawing of the bilateral relationship. I'm talking about not end of this year, but sometime late spring of year 2014, past the so-called Takeshima Day in February, and South Korea's celebration of the March Independence Movement Day, which is the first day of March.
Okay. Thank you for your insight, Dr. Bong. And for a check of another story, back to you, Min Jung-young.
All right, we brought you news on Monday that a helicopter crashed into a high-rise apartment building in the Gangnam district, killing both of the pilots on board. Now, the cause of the accident is still unknown, but there are questions about the safety of these high-rise buildings.
Well, thankfully, no one inside the buildings were hurt, but of course, as you mentioned, the safety of these buildings, as well as the safety of the flight paths, they all come into effect. And Arirang News' Song Ji-sun joins us with more. Good morning.
Good morning, Ji-sun.
Morning, guys. I live in like a very high-rise building, and did you guys know that the iconic 63 building in Yeouido is no longer the tallest building in Seoul? And in fact, it's only the fourth tallest building in the capital right now, and the tallest building in Korea is currently under construction. But the safety of these super high-rise buildings is still a great concern for both the people working and living in these buildings and those flying above them. Let's delve into this issue right now. It was an unprecedented accident, with a helicopter crashing into a high-rise apartment building in Seoul this past weekend. Investigation is still underway to determine what caused the private helicopter to deviate from its flight plan before slamming into the side of the building. The incident has led to public concerns about the safety of skyscrapers in the capital, especially since even taller buildings are now being constructed. I'm at Chamsil in eastern Seoul, in front of what will eventually be the tallest building in Korea at 123 stories high. It will be completed within the next 2 years, but its construction is raising more concerns about the safety and hazards of super high-rise buildings. The Lotte Super Tower building will be the 18th super high-rise in Seoul, a moniker given to buildings that stand more than 50 stories tall. A handful are located in the business district of Yeouido, but the affluent Gangnam district has the most with 8. The Lotte Super Tower is stirring controversy again, since it's in close proximity to Seoul Airport, Korea's Air Force base where the president routinely flies out of. The government has revised the airport's runway so that it will not conflict with the world's soon-to-be 6th tallest building, but that hasn't allayed concerns.
The problem is position, because the position where the second rocky world is located is near the route where this airplane takes off and lands, or altitude. The airplane passage by the building is around 280 meters. But when it's like 555 meters high, as you can see, the airplane flies almost in the waist side, almost in between half.
Following this past weekend's helicopter crash, Lotte Group said there are currently no plans to revise the blueprint of the Lotte Super Tower building. The company said the government had fully reviewed its risks at the time of approval. While the new skyscraper is under a growing amount of controversy, an urban safety professor who advises Korea's National Emergency Management Agency said Korea has a positive track record for the safe construction of high-rise buildings compared to other countries.
After a fire broke out at a skyscraper in Busan in 2009, the government enacted a special law on high-rise buildings. The law came into effect last year, and since then, all super high-rise buildings must abide by the regulation. It requires evacuation floors and fire escape elevators, as well as other measures to prepare for the case of tsunamis, earthquakes, and even terror attacks.
Experts point out that skyscrapers will continue to rise on Seoul's skyline to make the most out of Korea's limited land space, but ensuring the safety of the buildings, the residents, and aircraft flying above them must come first.
You said it in the report, and I have some figures. The number of high-rise buildings with 30 stories and higher has tripled in the last 5 years. And this is not the end of this story, right?
Exactly. The government has actually lifted a lot of measures and limitation of the high-rise buildings. And first, let us categorize of the high-rise buildings. The buildings that are 30 stories or high are categorized as high-rise buildings, and those are higher than 50 stories, they're called super high-rise buildings. And when it comes to numbers, Seoul has the most number of buildings higher than 30 stories, but Busan has the highest number of super high-rise buildings has 25. And they're also planning to build 3 more buildings that are higher than 100 stories. And they will also have those buildings there. That's also a bigger number than Seoul capital.
Okay, so we're seeing an increase of these high-rises as well as the super high-rise buildings. So many more people are moving into them. But let's focus this on the residents as well as the people that are going to be leasing the buildings. Now, is it safe? That's the bottom line. Is it safe for these people that are in there, as well as pilots that are flying over them?
Exactly. Like I mentioned, there was a fire at a high-rise building in Busan, and after that incident, the government has actually revved up effort, and they have actually enacted this law, and that includes obligating an evacuation floor as well as evacuating elevators in case of fire. And that actually secures a lot of safety for the residents there as well. And of course, in terms of flights and the airplanes flying above them, actually the warning light on the exterior of the building is actually the only guiding light for the pilots. But that was also the problem here in the case of the Art Park's helicopter crash. So the building itself doesn't have a lot of measures to protect itself because there is no announcement or alerts to actually notify the pilots. So that's a part we should actually be working on.
Okay, those beacons need to be maintained so that they're working properly all the time. All right, thank you very much, Yusan, for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead on Korea Today. Are the cold wind picking up in your area? Well, it is getting pretty cold, and the daily lows are dipping by the day. It's easy to catch a cold. Enjoy some dishes cooked up with Korean citron or Yuja, packed with vitamin C and other nutrients. Chef Andreas Krampl joins us in the studio. And as we were talking about the high-rise buildings in Busan, Busan is investing on focusing on international conventions as well as medical tourism, and is putting a lot of focus on the meetings, incentive travel, as well as exhibitions or conventions and exhibitions, which is known as MICE. Now, travel as well as the medical tourism industry has been booming in the port city.
That's right. Last year, Busan ranked 5th in Asia and 19th in the world as the host of international meetings. So today we're going to go to Busan and show you the triple charms of Busan. Not one, not two, 3 charms of Busan. The medical services that it offers and the tourist attractions, as well as doing business in this port city. So let's go.
Korea's #1 marine city, Busan. As one of Asia's most popular international cities, Busan welcomes approximately 2.5 million foreign visitors each year. Especially now, with more business travelers coming to the city, the hotel industry has moved quickly to meet the needs of these guests.
Well, it's a very nice hotel. I'm impressed.
Yeah, the room was, I've only been in the room 5 minutes, but it was very nice. Nice view, very clean.
This hotel has furnished each guest room with a personal workstation and has 11 meeting rooms, individual computer rooms with simultaneous interpretation services, and more. Here, over 60% of the overnight guests are foreigners, and among them, over half are here on business.
I believe that the hotel has excellent facilities, so I would expect that when you organize seminars or large convention meetings, I would expect that the guests will feel that very comfortable.
Recently, Busan has been aiming to establish a blue ocean strategy of combining MICE with medical tourism. Last September, the 6th Busan International Medical Tourism Convention was successfully held at Bexco with over 90 foreign and local medical institutes in attendance. Inje University Haeundae Baek Hospital is a leading medical institute in Busan. It is becoming a central medical institution with its advantageous location near Haeundae and its aggressive marketing towards foreign patients.
Our goal is to combine our world-class medical techniques with the famous tourism destination of Haeundae so that it becomes Busan's focal point for medical tourism. We have worked hard since our establishment 3 years ago, and as a result, over 1,000 foreign patients have been treated at our hospital last year. Now, our hospital treats the most number of Russian patients in Korea.
In 2010, it opened its International Healthcare Center and has provided special care for foreign patients. Sergeyev Artem is a medical tourist from Russia, and this is already his second visit to this hospital. In 2012, he underwent knee surgery, and he's in Busan again this year for his final treatment.
I constantly heard people around me praise Haeundae Pig Hospital. So when it came time for me to choose a hospital, I didn't think twice. I wasn't able to treat my leg injury for 3 years, but after receiving treatment in Busan, my leg has healed completely.
Here in Busan, he will take a new step in life. Another advantage of Busan's medical tourism industry is that it offers special medical treatments that are unavailable elsewhere. The hydrophysiotherapy room is built so that medical staff and patients' guardians can observe the process. In addition, the facility uses natural spring water, which was discovered during construction of the hospital. In Busan, it was the first medical facility to be equipped with robotic surgical systems for use in departments of general surgery, urology, OB/GYN, and for various cancer treatments. The robotic surgical system allows the doctor to see 10 times closer and in 3D so that the surgery is executed more precisely. In Busan, you can experience a combination of several tourism ideas. This is Evgenia Aksanov, a medical tourist from Russia who arrived in the city last week. Today is her final day of treatment.
So far, I've been resting at my hotel, and now I'm going to the hospital nearby for a consultation. It's right below here.
She is staying at a building that has both a hotel and hospital. Built in 2011, this is Korea's first Meditel. The hospital is situated in the lower floors of the building, and a business hotel sits on its upper floors.
Due to the influx of medical tourists in Busan, we now have a lack of lodging facilities, and the rundown, neglected lodging facilities are a problem too. I wanted to provide better accommodations and convenience, so after much deliberation, we came up with the idea of opening a Meditel.
It was the hospital's doctors that advocated the building of this hotel. They wanted to solve their patients' inconvenience of traveling back and forth from various lodging facilities around the city. Thanks to this, now patients are able to enjoy a one-stop lodging and medical tourism service.
I like that it's located in central Busan, and most of all, I like that the hospital and hotel are in the same location. I can get treated for almost everything, and the facilities are nice.
The facility is also a top-class medical institute. They have a total of 12 medical departments, along with operation rooms and hospital rooms, boasting the qualities of a general hospital. Currently, Busan is equipping itself with unique but practical business ideas such as these.
This is only my second hospital visit in my entire life. The first was in Russia. But Busan is great. Its employees are friendly, and it has world-class facilities. I'm very satisfied with my treatment.
There is also a new, unique service that combines MICE with tourism. Simply put, it's ocean meets convention. Aboard this yacht, there is a bedroom, a small meeting room, a minibar, and more. And at the booker's request, they also offer free convention equipment. The yacht convention is already famous among foreign tourists. There's an average of 400 users each month at the base cost of roughly $450 for 4 people an hour. You're able to conduct enjoyable meetings on the sea. On the deck, the yacht is furnished with fishing equipment and foot spas so members of the meeting can relieve stress and relax when they conclude their business.
Busan fish.
Busan fish.
Busan fish.
yacht convention is a vibrant addition to Busan's MICE industry attractions.
I'm from Vietnam. This is the first time I come here for the business trip. I'm just doing business currently between Busan and Vietnam. And this is the first time here, and I believe that this is a really fantastic place for the owner business people. They can come by here for the B2B tour and do anything. Because you have the very good scenery. Everything is very peaceful.
The international community is focusing its attention on Busan, East Asia's medical tourism hub and Asia's MICE industry leader. More business travelers are expected to enjoy doing business in the city while taking advantage of the top-notch medical services and tourism attractions.
I want to be on that yacht.
The yacht, right? Forget the medical tourism, but the yacht. Well, anyhow, if you did see the patients that participated in the medical tourism aspect, you might have noticed that they were all Russian. Now, Russian patients account for the majority of medical tourists in Busan, and that is because Vladivostok is just a 2-hour flight away, which makes it very close. And another thing is that I want to mention is the visa waiver program. Once it becomes enacted, patients will be able to, Russian patients will be able to fly over to Busan and participate in the program without a visa.
Right, and in this year and next year is designated as Visit Korea and Visit Russia years. So I guess an exchange and expansion could benefit Busan even more in terms of the MICE industry.
That's right, and Busan is coming up with various packages in order to attract more tourists. And if you go to the Busan Medical Tourism website, you can make reservations on the medical services as well as leisure activities like golf and deep sea fishing, as well as that yacht that we looked at. That was a nice yacht,
it's
right?
Very
luxurious.
And the services are provided. You can rent by the hour and just enjoy the time out in the open sea. And that's Busan for you. And, excuse me. And now we're going to...
We're coming down with something, I'm telling you. I had that moment before, too.
Excuse me, yeah. Exactly. It is pretty much cold season.
What do we need at a time like this?
Well,
Some
I think
Yuja tea.
Exactly. That's known as citron. And our chef, Andreas Krampl, he's going to be joining us with a recipe of his own. Chef, good morning.
Do you have something for us?
Good morning, of course I have. I actually
make a quick fix.
Made up 2 recipes today for you today. The usual tea, I mean, everyone pretty much knows that the Yuja are amazing fruit. When I first came to Korea, something new again for me. I thought it's the orange first. I said, the orange looked funny. And then I opened it, I looked at it, and I realized, wow, this is an amazing fruit. And fact is that this one has 3 times more vitamin C than normal lemon. So this is something to help you getting off a cold or preventing a cold for a start.
Can you toss it over to us?
So we'll have plenty of this later. So I make 2 simple recipes. One, I do a little tuna tartare with some yuza jelly. And the second one, I saw some strawberries on the market. The first one's after a long time, so I'm going to make a little yuza sabayong with some fresh strawberries. So to get going with the tuna tartare, very simple. I use a high-grade tuna, slice it into little cubes. I add a little bit of spring onion to it, a little bit of sesame seeds, a little bit of soya sauce, and a touch of salt to season it all up. That's pretty much my tuna tartare, just combining it all. And we're done for the first part. The second part, I make a little avocado diced on top. So I use some fresh avocado. I dice it up a little bit.
Oh, avocados.
The creaminess of the avocado and the tuna plus the yuza, I think this is a really nice combination.
It's going to go very well together.
It's really, really nice. And the avocado, I mean, you need to make sure it's quite ripe and soft. Otherwise, for me, the avocado doesn't really taste right. It needs to be soft, so. And this is the second part of my tartare.
I don't know anything about cooking, but that looks already good.
Yeah, he actually hasn't cooked anything yet.
I know.
He's just mixed everything so far.
And the most important part, my jelly, what goes on top. But pretty much I made from the seaweed and the anchovies. I made a little stock, and I used some gelatine to set the stock. So that takes a bit of time, so I made this ahead, and it kind of looks like this after.
Okay.
So I put it in a flat tray, I put it in the fridge, and
It looks
It
like
doesn't have a lot of
And
color,
that's the
though.
Yuja jelly, yeah.
I thought it'd be a lot yellower.
Citrusy flavor. It's quite really nice to go along with the
I'm
tuna
really looking
tartare.
forward to trying how that tastes or
Right.
seeing it for myself.
So I'll combine these later for you to taste. Second recipe, actually very simple. I use my strawberries. If they're not sweet enough, normally what I do, I use a little bit icing sugar and I marinate them for a little while. And I use a little bit of the Yuja juice to drizzle along. And that's pretty much it. So I leave them for about 10-15 minutes in the fridge to get nice and marinated. For the second part, I make a sabayon. What I need for that is some white wine I put into a bowl.
Oh.
I use some egg yolks, what I separated earlier. I use some sugar, normal custard sugar. And then, of course, the most important part, my Yuja. Again, I take 2 big spoons of that. If you want to spice it up a little bit, you can use a little bit orange liquor because that goes nice together. So there's different ones, Grand Marnier, Control, and as well a little bit of the Yuja juice.
Right, and Yuja, it's been an ingredient in the Korean cuisine since the 1400s. Did you know that?
I had no idea it had that much history.
It's very versatile. You can use it so much in dressings and marinades and glazings because it has that. It's not actually a sweet taste. It has a bitter and a little bit sour taste to it. So it goes really well with a lot of ingredients. So.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do with this mixture out of Yuja, white wine, sugar, lemon juice, or Yuja juice, I'm going to whip this for about 3 or 4 minutes on a low temperature water bath, so it becomes thick and creamy. And this one I will top over my strawberries later.
Okay, well, sounds great. Strawberries and eggs,
Right,
I never thought of that.
interesting interpretations of Yuja. Now, this is how we normally enjoy Yuja. This is a great show. I'm telling you, I said I want some Yuja tea, and there I have it. Voila, right?
And just in time for
producers
my
are
cough
great.
as well.
Exactly.
It's perfect. All right, Andreas, we'll
Thank
be
you,
looking forward to the
Andreas.
next part. Thank you very much.
All right, well, still ahead on Korea today. It opened its doors just last week to the public. We're going to take you to the Seoul branch of the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, where visitors are greeted with open space, a movie theater, a book cafe, and more venues to enjoy the arts. So don't go away.
You know, they say that the citron tea is quite sensitive to cold conditions, which is kind of like the South Korean football team, which is probably why they had the match against Russia in Dubai. So let's see if the warmer conditions helped out the Taeguk Warriors. Of course, going into the match here, just 6 minutes into the match, it's the big man Kim Shin-wook finds the back of the net, giving Korea the early 1-0 lead. Kim Shin-wook finally getting the goal he needs here, but just 6 minutes later, the South Korean defense caught sleeping here as Fyodor Smolov sends one past Chung Sung-young, and all of a sudden, it's 1-1. Stays that way going into the second half of the match, but it's Dmitry Tarasov who scores for the Russians once again, giving them the 2-1 lead. And despite the Taeguk Warriors trying to find the equalizer here, that's how things end as Russia takes this match 2-1, your final score. And now moving on to golf, where after clinching the LPGA Player of the Year title, Park In-bi will now go after the top earning and the lowest scoring average for the second straight year. With the season's last event, the CME Group title holders taking place this week, Park In-bi is currently in the lead with a little over $2.39 million in earnings this season, with Suzanne Pedersen right behind her at just $100,000 behind. Meanwhile, Park is currently third in the lowest scoring average at 69.9, with Stacey Lewis in the lead with 69.48. That's going to be a tough finish for the lowest scoring average, but anything can happen going into the last event of the season. And now moving on to some Tuesday night KBL action, as we had one game that took place last night. Now, Wonju Dongbu Promi looking to end their 10-game losing streak as they went up against the Incheon Itilan Elephants. So let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going into the game here, first quarter of the game, 5 different Dongbu players scoring in the first quarter as they take a slim 22-21 lead. But the second quarter of the game, Ricardo Pau leading the way for Incheon as they tied this game 41-41 going into halftime. third quarter, still a close game, but Incheon manages to rally back to take a slim 2-point lead going into the fourth quarter before running away with it in the fourth quarter with Ricardo Powell finishing off with 27 points and 7 boards as Incheon takes this game 84-71, with Donggu now on an 11-game losing streak. And now finishing things off with some Tuesday night V-League action, this time as Daejeon KGC beat GS Caltex in straight sets 3-0 over on the women's side. So with that said, let's take a look at the highlights from the men's side as Samsung Blue Fangs took on Uri Card. Of course, going into the game here, a rather close game to start things off as Samsung barely takes the first set 25-23. Second set equally as tough for the Samsung Blue Fangs as they steal the second set 30-28. Uri Card looking to bounce back in the third set, but holy cow, Leo Martinez with 42 attack points in this game, helping Samsung take the third set with ease 25-18 to take this game in straight sets 3-0. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
And our Ida-mi is standing by at the Seoul branch of the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art that just opened just recently.
All right, it is a beautiful site, as you'll see, with Ida-mi. Good morning, and back to you.
I'm back reporting live from the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, or also known as MMCA. So the museum just opened up its doors of this whole branch just last week. And the location of the museum itself is amongst cultural heritages like Gyeongbokgung Palace and Cheongdokgung Palace. It's also amongst prime tourist spots, as east of the museum there's the Bukchon Hanok Village, and in the southwest there's the southwest is the Gwanghwamun Square, and in the southeast of the museum there's the Insadong Street. So many people are saying that in the future the museum itself is going to become another popular tourist site. So today I'm going to show you a couple of the exhibitions that you can find only at the Seoul branch. This is the Jongchimbu Yard. So back in the Joseon Dynasty, this is where the office work for the royal family was done. Here at the museum, they tried to restore the building and transform it into another new cultural space. Now, one of the main attractions that you can't miss out is these special chairs. So they call it the 따뜻한 의자, or the warm chair. These chairs are the work of the media art writer Kim Seung-young. He wanted to portray the love and affection of a mother by keeping these chairs warm at 37.4 degrees Celsius. Ooh, it's nice and warm. So through a special device, these chairs are kept warm all year long. It's perfect for the weather these days. So this is just one of the spots at the museum where you can just sit back and relax. It's a great opportunity to have some alone time as well. Now, this is just a small glimpse of what you can find at the Seoul branch of the MMCA. Peter will have more on this in the Seoul segment, so stay tuned for that. I'm Ida-mi, Korea Today.
That was a small glimpse of the museum, as Tommy put it.
That's right.
For a larger view.
For a larger view, we're joined by Peter Bint, who will be talking more about the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. Yes, I hope I can give you a big glimpse. Some of you may have already visited the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul, and I was lucky enough to go on the weekend, and I saw a stunning variety of works. And there's also some amusing hidden spots in the museum that I'll tell you about. So follow me while we go to the MMCA in Seoul. We're at the Seoul branch of the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art, situated near Samcheongro. Located in central Seoul, it's built in a convenient and accessible location. This museum was built with glass to highlight the clean lines and emphasize simplicity. This is because the main goal when designing the building was to create a modern space while preserving the old hospital building for armed forces and the former Defense Security Command headquarters as much as possible.
This location has been a landmark of Central Seoul for a long time. The minimalistic exterior allows museum visitors to admire its surrounding scenery, and the building was designed to put an emphasis on its yard and other external spaces.
It's good to see the transformations there.
Yeah, and it's huge. At 50,000 square meters, it's where traditions coexist with modernity. It's a new city landmark that emphasizes its surrounding historical importance as well. And the MMCA has a total of 8 exhibition halls and also a multi-project hall. There are currently 5 exhibitions, but Gallery 1 and 2 are showing the most significant pieces from the museum's collection. These best represent their era and tell the story of how modern art has evolved since the Korean War. The galleries are mostly located in the basement floor, but because the museum lets in a lot of natural light, you can enjoy artwork in good lighting.
Other museums or galleries have dim lighting, but this museum has lots of natural light that shines through, so I like that I can clearly see the artwork in bright spaces.
He's a future architect.
Seems to know what he's talking about.
The high ceilings and the wide halls allow for the display of large installation pieces.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And thanks to the Media Lab, the display of new multimedia fields are also possible, like text animation that moves with the music. Here you can look at various genres of modern and contemporary art. And this is the largest installation piece in the museum. It's 15 meters high and 13 meters wide. It's a real-size replica of a 3-story townhouse, and inside is a reproduction of the artist's traditional 2-story hanok. The Seoul Box exhibition area allows for these large-scale artworks.
The museum aimed to create a lot of open spaces. Not only can you admire art, there are also rest areas where you can enjoy a cup of coffee and meals.
After viewing the artwork in the basement, you can come up to the first floor where there are rest areas for museum visitors. And this is the theatre. The place was built to show difficult-to-find art films to the public. Right now, they are screening 6 different films.
Sometimes museums can feel a bit intimidating, but I like it here because it offers convenient facilities to the public. I feel like I can visit regularly.
Wow, some great artworks and a beautiful building to go with.
Right, it's huge. It's huge.
It is.
Yeah, it really seems to have the modernity as well as the traditional aspects of Korean structured buildings. But the art museum itself, it just opened. Must be a ton of people heading there. Now, is there a comfortable way to watch this without standing in lines all day?
Absolutely. The museum is helping in that. They're limiting visitors to 500 people per hour at the start, and then 50% of the tickets are available in advance online, and the other 50% on site on the day. And then for people who can't make the daytime visiting hours, like I'm sure a lot of office workers, on Wednesdays and Saturdays from 6 to 9 p.m., it's actually open free of charge, which is great. And it's easy to get tickets in advance for that. The only point to note is, like many other attractions in Seoul, museums especially, it's closed on Mondays. So you should schedule your visit around that.
Right, and this art museum is dubbed as an art center, right? No wonder, it's because I've seen so many public facilities like the theaters, libraries, cafes. How can people use these facilities?
Well, the theatre in particular has got some great experimental and art films, which are again shown free of charge Wednesday through to Sundays at 3 p.m. And tickets for that, you don't need to book in advance. You can just get them on site on that day. So what's better than a free film?
What is better than a free film?
Maybe Korea Today.
Lost for an answer there.
Free tickets for the museum, perhaps?
Right.
Can you hook us up with those?
I'll give it a try.
Oh, thank you, Peter, for this story.
Thanks a
Very
lot.
interesting. All right. It's time to end our show so we can enjoy some Yuja dishes.
That's right. Our viewers may not be able to, but Chef Andreas Krampl is over there and he's finishing up with that, putting the finishing touches on there. So have a great day and we'll see you back here tomorrow at 7 a.m. and we'll enjoy the food.
Thanks for watching. Can't wait. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.